Kelly, my rule of thumb is if that's what you believe in and then you don't want to, don't. Don't
Hmm.
do it because I don't want, and my couples don't want you at their wedding if you don't truly believe in their love.
Loverly presents the Wedding Podcast, a show for those on the road to I do. From relationship advice to wedding planning tips, we break it down. I'm your host, Kelly Khalil, bride to be and the founder of Loverly, a DIY wedding planning platform. Over the years, we've helped tens of thousands of couples get down the aisle. And now that it's my turn, I'm not holding back. I'm bringing in my besties, wedding pros, and some brides to be you may know to talk through everything from picking the perfect venue to mastering your relationship. It's time to plan smarter so you can focus on the happily ever after. You've got the ring, we've got the rest. Welcome back to the podcast. We are sitting down with event planner, designer extraordinaire, Chanda Daniels. She has not one, but two businesses. She's the founder of a Monique Affair and the creative director of Chanda Daniels Planning and Design. She has been in the industry since 1999, planning over the top, elegant weddings that reflect a couple's unique style. So Sean is going to break down everything from tricky family dynamics on the wedding day and during the planning process and how to handle that. She also specializes in LGBTQ plus weddings. She has a wealth of information, a lovely human, and I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Let's get into it. Chanda, welcome to the podcast. I cannot believe before we started, just a few seconds ago, we were just chatting and that we crossed paths like almost 20 years ago. No, not 20 years ago. Is it 20, 15 years ago when you
Yeah.
were first starting out and I was in the wedding industry and now it comes full circle. So it's nice to catch up.
It is very nice to catch up. And like I was saying, the OGs, they appreciate it. They know this industry, they've seen the changes. So I'm happy that we're all still here.
It is such an interesting industry, and you're right. So many people come in, they do their thing, they get burned out, or they have a bad experience and they go away. So it is nice to see when there is someone like you who's been in the game for so long and done so many incredible weddings. So before we get into it, give everyone the backstory on Chanda. How did you start your business? What's your specialty? Give us the whole rundown.
Okay, so I am Chanda Daniels and the owner and creative director of A Monique Affair and Chanda Daniels Planning and Design. I started in this industry with AMA, which we call it, A Monique Affair, in 1999, just because I've always been a very organized person and love planning things and just didn't realize that you could actually get paid and that it was a job. And then once I finally realized that, went through certification, got my first client, and then realized like, oh my goodness, there's nobody out here that's planning weddings for LGBTQ plus couples. So I wanted to make myself the go-to for that. And then many years later, when things just started to become focused on diversity and inclusion, we were already there because
Yeah,
that was
you've
my
been there. You've been there.
girl. That was my, yes, that was my thing since 99. So I'm happy to see everyone else being on board in that way and just being connected to their couples in that way. And then ultimately, after being at AMA for such a long time and creating a business where others can thrive, other planners of color, and folks who have not traditionally been in the spotlight for planning, I decided to branch off and do Chanda Daniels Planning and Design, where I could really, really, really focus on my wedding weekends and my design. And that's what I love that I'm doing right now.
And you also educate, right? You teach others how to be in like the basics of getting in and building a business here.
Yes, building businesses about diversity and inclusion in the industry to other wedding creatives, and also mentoring. I do a lot of mentoring from San Francisco State and other people that just reach out to me as well. I don't have like a formal program or anything, but I just love sharing my knowledge and making sure that other wedding creatives and other wedding planners have the tools to be successful and know that, hey, it's not always glamorous, but when you put your work in and your time and you invest, good things happen.
Absolutely. It is funny that, and I don't mean funny like haha, but interesting that diversity, inclusion, like is now very on trend. It's the thing, right? And one of the reasons why I started Loverly was I felt like there wasn't really a everyone talked about the glossy moments of wedding planning and the wedding itself, but like what happens when you have your period on your wedding day? How do you deal when you have a parent who can't be at the wedding? How do you honor them? And all of these nuanced things that for me, when I was going through my sister's, you know, wedding planning journey, right, that I experienced, right? And so I was like, I want to kind of showcase the all inclusive parts of the planning process, the good, the bad, the ugly, so people really have a roadmap, right? And yes, there's beautiful photos, but there's a lot of hiccups along the way, and that's okay. And it is a journey, right? And I think there's a huge parallel with what you're doing in that this is authentic to who you are as a person, right? And your identity and your work. And now it's like everyone's woken up to like this is the reality. So you really are a pioneer in that just being yourself and like, you know, putting that creativity in the world. It's like the world has caught up.
Thank you. Yes, and that's why I feel like it's so important for me to like be on podcast and tell people my journey because when I came in, there was no one that looked like me, loved like me, any of those things. And so, even though I found my amazing mentor way back then, I didn't have anyone that looked like me for inspiration. And like you said, it's yes, the glamorous pictures and being featured and all of that stuff is amazing, but knowing like what goes on when it's not an Instagrammable moment or when planning gets tough or when you have like a hard client, having someone to really have conversations with and look and say like, okay, I remember this girl from Oakland was doing this and now look at her. So I want to be an inspiration.
Mm.
Definitely.
Well, you already are, and for those
Oh,
who aren't who aren't familiar with your work, I mean, you've been featured in Brides, Martha Stewart Weddings. I think I saw your work on the cover of Muna Lucci Bridal. I mean, you've been everywhere.
yes. Okay, so that is totally, I don't know. That was one of those moments where I'm like, I literally text my mom and I'm like, Mom, look, I'm on the cover. I am on the cover. Like, just thinking about where I came from to being on that cover, man, it was such a, I don't know, one of those moments where I just needed some tissue because I was literally crying. I'm a crier, so yeah, I'm a crier.
Well, you're in the right industry, right? Because it's all about love and emotions. But take us back to that kind of when you first started. So in 1999 with a Monique affair, that's how you started out. What? How did you get your first wedding? What was that budget, that scale? Like, what was that experience like?
Oh my God, the first wedding was hilarious. Not hilarious in terms of the couple, but the whole journey. So, okay, this was my very first wedding. I didn't know what was going on. I put an ad, a tiny, tiny ad in the newspaper. So, you know how long ago that was, right? A tiny ad in the newspaper. And an Indian couple hired me,
Mm.
and I only charged them, okay, I know you're sitting down, $500. And they signed that contract so fast. I was like, oh my gosh, is this how it works? But then, literally, and I didn't do the whole entire weekend at that point. They only hired me to do the reception piece, and it was at the Richmond Auditorium. And so, auditorium, you know how many people it was. I
Mm.
feel like I made like $1 per person. It was huge. And then by the time I got outside and I was done for the night, I was literally sitting in my car crying and writing out what I needed to move forward. Sometimes when you're put in those situations, you just jump into action and be like, "Oh, heck no. This is how it's going to be moving forward." And then I came up with the team and all of that from that first event, but literally I thought my feet were like going to fall off. It was
It's
me by myself.
I mean, that is wild. I know from, when I was in college and my sister, who Be Inspired PR, I think you know Lila, she used to produce events. That was how she got into weddings. And I would be her staff, day of, I would be there running around. And I can't tell you, after that first event that I was on my feet for like 8 hours and I was wearing flats, like that, the pain that you have in your feet, the swelling of your feet, it's a next level experience that, like, when I meet, planners, day of coordinators, on-site staff, I'm like, how? You have to, it's like a marathon. You got to train for it. Like, I was not expecting that.
Exactly. You're like, are my feet numb or what's going on here?
It's a real thing. It's a
But
real thing.
I feel like I'm gonna make I'm gonna strike it rich when I come up with a shoe that you
Mm,
can wear from setup until breakdown. That is where I'm going to make my millions. But I haven't come
mhm.
up with that shoe yet.
I know the struggle is real. So that was your first event. Okay. How did you, what were the key things that you learned there? I'm assuming it was charge more than $500.
Girl, yes. So charge, like, really understand what it takes to put together a wedding, to charge what you're worth. But the biggest is that you cannot do it all by yourself. You cannot do it by yourself. So, because when I planned that, it was me just doing all the planning. And then on the day of, it was just me. So I was like, okay, nope, not never again. So then I decided, like I do still do today, I have a team that comes out for wedding day on for our company, about 8 people, 8 people max. And then if it's more locations, we get more people. But for every single wedding, depending on the size and location, we have different people doing different things in charge of those different things, because as a planner, I was so that first event, I didn't know what the heck. It was just so much going on, to where I thought to myself, I don't want to be frazzled on the day of. I want to be calm, so when all the other creatives come to me to ask me questions, I can do that calmly and really listen to them. Because sometimes when there's a lot going on, you're just like, yeah, sure. And you're like, well, wait, why are you doing that? Well, you told me. So just really making sure that all my planners are calm, so giving them all the support needed so they can make those calm decisions and make sure the day of is just as flawless as the planning.
So important. And if someone who's planning a wedding is listening to this, think about the difference of one person at 500, which is basically free. That that's not a real number,
Ooh.
to having the right resources and team on your day of 8 people. I mean, the events that you do are at a certain design level and caliber that it warrants having a large team, I assume, right, for
Mhm.
the type of production that you do. But, you know, that's all what goes into the cost and the pricing of hiring a planner like you, right? Is that you're getting that full service, you're getting all of those hands to help execute to make the event flawless. And a lot of couples go back and forth on, should I hire a planner? Should I hire a designer? Because they don't fully understand, right, until after the fact, what all goes into it, just like you did on your first wedding. You didn't know what
Mhm.
you were getting into. But once it happens, you're like, okay, I get it now. And sometimes for couples, it's too late. They've already had their wedding day. So let this be the lesson.
Yeah, definitely be the lesson because I feel like there's a lot of times couples feel that it's just another expense that they really don't have to put up or invest in, and then they'll lead on their request the photographer or the catering manager or the venue manager to be their planner, but it's really worth the investment, seriously. And there are planners in every single price budget, so I highly advise, no matter what your budget is, find a good qualified planner that's within that comfort zone for you, but at least have someone and let the other creatives do their thing.
It's so important. So you really broke out, I would say, from what I see, the top weddings. You became known as the planner for the LGBTQ community.
Yes.
And the level of design and execution, I mean, those weddings are being featured in every single publication that is out there, which is what I think has also brought that, part of that wave of acceptance, of people understanding. What was that process like for you? Like, were you specifically targeting, those types of couples? Were you out there marketing yourself in that way, or how did that come?
Well, what I did is once I decided that there were no other planners that were focusing on the LGBTQ plus community, I decided to make that my ideal client. Like make specifically put pictures and images before I had my first client. Make sure that I put images and the wording and content and everything out so they can know that if they came to me, that they would be cared for and they would be celebrated and all of those things. And this was, like I said, in the very beginning, before we had all of the different kind of classes and whatnot to show you how to use inclusive language. Because I'm in the community, I talk to myself. I put it out there to say, like, okay, how would I feel good? Like, what words do I
Mm-hmm.
want to see and what images do I want to see? Because ultimately, everybody wants to see themselves. So,
Mm-hmm.
even if that's LGBTQ plus community, black and brown community, I feel like I'm in both. So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make sure that whatever I put out there, folks would feel comfortable and know to come to me. And so that was it. Just once I put it out there, and I started speaking about it and talking about it, but literally, Kelly, was just the work. The weddings that I did, and I connected myself with a lot of the top blogs that featured LGBTQ plus. I was really focused on that and built those relationships. Not just, oh, can you post me, but really finding out about them and getting them connected to why I was doing it and to hear why they were doing whatever they were to highlight the community as well. And then when I got my very first, Muna Lucci again was one of the very first wedding magazines that published one of my couples. And they had, at that point, they had never published an LGBTQ plus couple. So I was like, okay, I'm I'm going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
But I did have a lot of people telling me, Shonda, if you focus on just LGBTQ plus, or if you focus on just black and brown people, you're not going to get business. And I didn't listen to that. I was like, this is what is speaking to me and my values and my heart. And so ultimately now it's just any and everybody that value diversity and inclusion, regardless of who they are, what they look like. If they value that, they like coming to us.
And you also have a curated group of vendors that you work with, right? To kind of bring to life your vision and your creative design. How was it selecting those vendors early on? Because I remember 10 years ago even, it was a thing. There were vendors who were turning down couples, which blows my mind that it was like a thing. Like I know I almost like take it for granted now, but it wasn't that long ago, right? That
Hmm.
it was illegal to get married, which is again, I'm like, wow. Um, but like, were there vendors early on that you had issues with, and how did you find your kind of tribe of your go-tos?
That's a good question because ultimately, like I said, once I decided this was going to be my piece, I just went out and start meeting with different creatives and asking the questions and asking for their experience and all of that and to see just where they stood all together. And then, and like you said, it wasn't that long ago. And I'm right across the bridge from San Francisco. So to hear that there are still folks even today in San Francisco that are like, no, I just don't, or in the Bay Area that's like, no. And Kelly, my rule of thumb is if that's what you believe in and then you don't want to, don't, don't do it because I don't want, and my couples don't want you at their wedding if you don't truly believe in their love. If you're not going to celebrate their love, if you're not going to put your all into this cake or put your all into their florals or pictures, if you have some thoughts going on, then go be with the couples that'll make you happy. I want to find the creatives. I want to work with the creatives who will make all of my couples happy. So it's been uh, the the creatives that I work with now. I absolutely love them all because we have the same values, and so when we come together and we design a wedding, we put on an event for our couples, they feel that it's a good connection from all of us. So it's amazing. It was work, but it was absolutely worth it, and it's amazing.
And today, how many events are you doing a year?
Good question. So for Chanda Daniels, because I do wedding weekends, I'm only taking about 4 to 6, depending on the dates that the weddings are. And then under A Monica Fair, we take about 15 because we do nonprofit events, we do all milestone celebrations, and then I have my planners who work on the weddings.
And when you say wedding weekend, you mean you're basically curating a number of events for the wedding weekend, like everything leading
Yes.
up to it. Walk us through that.
Okay, so that means literally your excuse me, your welcome celebration. So once your guests get there, it may be a cocktail hour, it may be a outing, it may be a farmers market visit, whatever that welcome event that you have, and then also the rehearsal dinner. So the rehearsal dinner for out of town guests, wedding party, and then the wedding day itself, and then following the wedding day, we do the farewell brunch. And so that can be, I love when couples bring in their different different traditions and things like that for the brunch and make it really fun. So all of those weekends, and then sometimes what we do as well is if there's a lot of out of town guests and they're coming a couple of days before, we'll plan an activity. We'll plan some wine tasting or some other activity before the whole weekend gets started. So that's why I only take 4 to 6 because each of those events, that's like a lot of work. It
Five,
seems fun and the
five
pictures,
events in one.
exactly.
And are most of them in like the California, Oakland, San Francisco area or destination? What's the composition of the events?
So they're pretty much in the Bay Area, and the Bay Area meaning the whole entire Bay Area. So San Francisco, Napa, Sonoma, all of the whole entire Bay Area. but we're open to going wherever folks want to bring us. So I'm all good for that. I have a passport, a valid passport.
You're like, let's go, let's go.
Let's go. Let's hit it.
I love that. I mean, it's become, really, really popular as of late to do a destination. I mean, I was considering a destination wedding for myself because I was thinking I could invite less people, make it more intimate. But there's something really special about someone who really, really knows the area, knows the ins and outs of every venue, every vendor, the permitting, the rules, because every little town has a different set of rules and hoops you have to jump through when you're planning events.
But you know, the good part is too, if you decide to do a destination wedding and hire like a planner that's local to you, we have such a, and we meaning planners in general, we have such a huge network of folks that we know in different areas that we can partner with
Mm-hmm.
someone in that destination and work as a team and get that wedding planned. So
Mm-hmm.
there's so many resources now because we all want to win. We all
Mm-hmm.
want each other to win, right? And so we're helping each other in that way. So if destination is your thing, I would say go for it.
Mm. And I'm curious for the types of weddings that you do, because when it's really hard to tell when you look at images, like
Hmm.
what something costs. A lot of the weddings that I've seen you do are, I mean, they're exceptional, right? They're really beautiful, a lot of floral, not overdone, but like, there's a lot going on in a intentional way. Like
Hmm.
what now is like, would you say the average range that you see for your couples for an event or even the whole weekend?
Okay, so for a Monique affair, which we call our relatable elegance clients,
Mm-hmm.
we are seeing between 100 and about 200, 100, 250. But
Mm-hmm.
then for Chanda Daniels, when I'm planning the entire wedding weekend, we're seeing 400 and above.
Okay, so here's my question, Shonda. You charged $500 for that first
Yes.
wedding. Did you ever think
Girl,
you would be
I
doing?
knew this was coming.
I mean, that is a huge leap. And look, it's been what, 30 years, but I mean not 30, 20 years, right? Is that right? Yeah, 20 years. But
20, about
like,
25.
wow. Okay,
Yeah.
I can't do
I
math.
know, I
25 years,
know.
but you went from $500, right? And what do you know what the budget of that original wedding was? Do you remember?
I don't even remember. No, I don't. Now you're going to make me go back and look because I don't remember the budget.
I mean, that's an incredible growth story, and it's really amazing.
Well, I can tell you, I remember when I was doing my first like LGBTQ plus wedding, I thought, and this was before anything was recognized or whatever, the largest budget that I started off with that I can remember was 40,000. And I say that I remember that number because I would always say like regardless if it was legal or not, people were still investing money to have a celebration. So I
Mm-hmm.
remember that 40,000. So going from 40,000 to what the budgets we're looking at now, I am just like, I'm blessed so much. And I appreciate every single step that has gotten me here. But to look at where I started to now is just, I'm always like, girl, you
You
hung in
did it.
there.
You did it. And during this time of running your business, you got married and did your own wedding. And I really want to hear about that process because you and I were just chatting before the podcast a bit about when you're in the industry and you're planning, just how kind of hard it can be because you're not, I don't want to say I'm over it, but like there's so many options that you kind of get paralyzed or almost sometimes apathetic. I don't know. Like, what was your whole planning process like?
So for my planning process, it was unique and different. It was very funny because my wife is a finance director, so you already know where I'm going with this. She was like, "Wait, how much do you want to spend? No, we're not doing that. No way, no how." And she challenged me. She was like, "You here's the amount that we are going to spend. You make it happen, and if you can't, you need to think about another industry." And I was like, what? Okay, challenge on. And
Mm,
so I made it happen. But I have to say that for me, because I had seen as a planner, I had seen so much that I really just wanted to keep it simple. I wanted to
mhm,
keep it very simple. So, because I had seen so much and seen all the choices, I let Stephanie pretty much pick out everything. I just wanted an opinion about my dress. That was it.
mm, mm,
But everything else, it was like, okay, you don't, I was over what, I shouldn't even say this just in case caterers are listening. I love wedding food, but I love creative wedding food, right?
mm,
And so for Stephanie, I said, just whatever. I just don't want basic. And so
mhm.
she came up with the menu with the caterer. I approved it. I liked it, and then we just went forward that way. So it's weird thinking as a planner I could release so much, but I did.
It's interesting because I've spoken to so many planners that are not yet married, right? But in that season in life, like a couple of my friends who have been on the podcast, Melissa Andre, she does over the top events. Jove in New York, he does over the top. And we always talk, and we're like, well, what, and they ask me, like, what are you going to do? And I should answer because I'm engaged now almost 3 years. I should have some type of vision. And I asked,
Yes,
and I'm like, I don't know. And I asked them, and so it's funny because it's oftentimes like the same thing. It's like, I want to keep it simple, right? It's because we're in the details every single day and we're in service. I mean, I'm not saying me because I'm not planning events, but I'm seeing them, right? But y'all are in service of other people planning their weddings that, like, when it comes to you, it's almost like, I don't need all that. I'm good. Less is more.
yeah, yes. Yes, and especially because for my wedding, I literally had, let's see, I got engaged in May, and then our wedding was in October of the same
Oh,
year.
fast.
Yeah. Stephanie was like, the
Wow.
longer we sit in this, the more you'll want to spend. So here is, because literally she wanted to do it. I remember she wanted to do it in June and July, and I was like, okay, it can happen, but it can happen at a higher price.
Yeah.
And so we
Yeah.
agreed. She agreed to
You can't
October,
have
but
speed. Yeah, you can't have
right.
speed and also, like, affordability. Like, there's only so many things that can happen. You can have quality, speed, and cost. And you can't have it cheap, fast, and high quality. Something's going to give, right? So,
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why I love when couples give me, especially for our wedding weekends, they have to give me at least a year to put everything together. And if they don't have the resources today, then it's time that they can like save up on things and get things situated and get comfortable with how much we're really going to spend.
so when you are working with couples, that's actually a really good point. Like, what is that process for you and your team? People are coming to you, a year before, and, like, what's your process for helping to, figure out the vibe and what you're going to create on behalf of these couples?
Oh, that's a really good question. So, what we do is we really take at least about a month or so just to hone in on what makes them happy, hear about their love story, how they met. I ask them to send me pictures of their house, the inside of their house, just to see what their design style is, because you can tell I love neutral colors, right? So by looking at a person's home and just finding out, asking a bunch of questions. Yeah, I need to know what are your favorite colors and stuff like that. Yeah, the basic stuff is good, but then finding out like what movies do you love? What's your favorite song? Who's your favorite artist? Like all, oh, I shouldn't say that because there's this movie that anyway. There's like so many there's so many things, so many questions to ask that you can find out about a person and about the couple together, because that's the ultimate goal, is making sure that the wedding is about the two of them and it's not just one person.
So once you figure out kind of the overall aesthetic or direction of what their style is, you start to map it out. Are you then going and selecting the vendor team? You're curating them? Are they bringing to you? Like, what's that process?
Oh, that's a good question too. So if they're with a Monique Affair, because it's two different ways to do it. So if they're with a Monique Affair, then yes, our planners will take that. They'll take all that information, put together like a very basic mood board or style board, and then think about, have some conversation and say like, okay, which one of our creative partners will be a good match for this particular style, and then present it to the couple, and then do interviews if the couple wants to interview all three, or if they say, okay, yes, we love this person, let's go with them. But for on my side, what I do is after I come up with that, then I'll say, here's the three people we're going to work with, let me know your thoughts, and then boom, we go with it, we run with it. It's
So on
all a
Chanda Daniels, you're more full service, where it's like you're actually curating the entire team. You're basically orchestrating the entire thing. That's that creative direction that's fully coming in, where from end to end production versus the other side is more planning, and the couple is involved in the decision making.
Yes, that is exactly right. And for the folks who hire me, they love, it's something about my style, in addition to me, it's something about my style that attracts them. And so they trust that. And so that's why I explain like the images you love, all of that, they're based off of these creatives. And I have it in my contract. Like these are the creatives that, like my creatives will be the ones that you work with. Um, but then on A Monique Affair, because we have different, because there's different like investment ranges and stuff like that, people may say like, oh, we love this DJ. And then the planners will go out and do some behind the scenes investigation and make sure that it's the right fit for their wedding, and then we move forward.
I'm curious, with all the weddings that you've done over the years, you know, you've done some beautiful events. Are there any, like, not disaster situations, but any kind of, um, you know, things that went awry that stand out for you in your career that you would like to share, that you think could be lessons learned for couples who are planning?
Mm, yes, I can think of something. Um, there was, so really making sure that your client is available to do, like really having that conversation with them to let them know that there are parts in this planning process that they have to be available for, like creating the guest list and making sure the guest list is at the right number for the venue. Yes, we as planners will tell you, like, here's the ideal amount and where we need to cut it off. But as a client, you have to be available to look at that list, put it together, make sure it's you're staying within that range, because that's when things can kind of go awry if, based on this venue, you're having 50 people over, and then like what happened? There are some, there are definitely, you have to be available. And if you're too busy as a couple, if you're too busy to plan your wedding, be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself and put it off to when you can, because it'll only do harm if you're not invested 100% to do your pieces. Does that make sense?
For sure. And do you find that more for your like full service creative direction clients that they're super busy and it's on that side, or is it more on the wedding planning, or have you seen it in both?
I've seen it in both. I've seen it in both, to where, because ultimately, as your planner, Any planner, as your planner, they give you guidelines and deadlines so you're not stressed out. But if you're super, super busy and missing those deadlines, and then it's coming to due date and you're stressing out, that goes against everything that we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I said, like, literally make sure you're at a place in your life where you can at least have a couple of weekends to tackle and be mindful and invested in doing those tasks and doing them the right way.
And not just as, one person in the couple. It needs to be both committed because, it's about both of you.
It is definitely about both. And we've had that situation too where the groom's like, oh, wait a second, I didn't know. And it's like, well, actually, yes, you did. So, yeah, just making sure that both sides of the couple are involved in all parts.
And I'm sure as part of your job, you're dealing with a lot of family dynamics, and they maybe look a little different with some of the couples that you're working with. But I'm curious, like, where have you seen, those family dynamics like really challenge, make the wedding planning process challenging?
Nothing has been really challenge. Well, okay, so it hasn't been challenging, but it's been very emotional. So for my LGBTQ plus couples, I have a lot of conversations about, will parents be there? Will
Mm,
parents walk a person down the aisle?
mm,
Will how will family members feel if it's their first time seeing the couple kiss? Like,
mm,
all of these conversations come up, and I have to say this too. Every single, and our wedding community will know this. Every single family has some kind of unique dynamics that you have to just be available to talk through. It's a
mm,
very emotional piece, especially as a wedding planner, because we are dealing with we have to be involved in all of those relationships and take on that energy. And
mm.
so we really have to make sure we take care of ourselves mentally as well.
Shonda, I didn't even think about that. I mean, this is how, like, it's not even, I wouldn't even think about, oh, would my father not be okay walking me down the aisle? Right? And, or is it, aunts and uncles or extended family that is invited that they might, be uncomfortable? And that's not even something that I even thought to consider. So that's your world. You're seeing that, you know, on a regular basis. So you end up being like
Yes,
a therapist.
I see that on a regular, on a good amount, and I feel like it's something that, because, and I'm happy you said that that's something you don't think about. That's something that a lot of people don't think about. So they don't think to have those kind of articles, to have those kind of conversations, because it's not an everyday thing.
Mm-hmm.
It is, like I said, it's very emotional at times, but it draws us closer to our couples because they're having those intimate conversations and we're figuring it out with them and guiding them the best way.
Well,
And
one of our
ultimately, family's going to be family no matter who you are. They're going to end up showing up and supporting you and loving you, and if they don't,
they
that's
don't.
okay too.
Yeah. I was going to say one of our most popular articles on Loverly from an organic perspective is alternatives to having your father walk you down the aisle. Because some people,
Yes.
their relationships, either they don't, their father is no longer around, they don't have a great relationship with them, whatever it may be, right? And that's been, I remember seeing that with the data, like, wow, that's a really, you know,
Mhm.
it's a point of contention. And what do you do? Is it your brother? And there's always ways. And the thing that's beautiful about weddings is you can do you can make up things, you can build new traditions, which I know is part of your whole thing, is building those new traditions.
Yes, and I'm so happy. Okay, you have to share that article with me so I can share it too, because I just looked up some articles about the same thing because I have a husband and wife couple who's like, well, what are some other ways? Because I don't want my parents walking me down. What? So that's what I mean about couples. I tell folks that the only thing that you have to do is have a marriage license and an officiant. Everything else can be what you want it to be. And
Hmm.
so if you don't want anybody walking you down, you don't have to. And so I
Hmm.
love creating and telling their love story from whatever connects to them.
I love that. Well, since you've been in the industry for so long and you've seen traditions that have lost favor and new traditions formed and trends come and gone, what are some of the, and I know trends is maybe not the right word, but what are the design elements or things that you're really excited about that you see that's new and interesting that gets you inspired when you're planning either a weekend or an event?
The thing that I like the most is just when couples or when folks let me be creative and keep it like if they love, I'm going to say if they love sushi, like having it a sushi inspired, I don't know, I just threw that out, but just making sure that it's about them and creating things that are, if they love donut holes, what have you, like making that a part of their desserts versus a cake if they're not really connected to a cake, and creating lounges. And I had one wedding that I absolutely loved. This couple was the sweetest. They all they wanted was disco balls. So whatever, they didn't care about any of the other design. They just wanted disco balls to be incorporated because that's what they loved. That's what connected them. They loved dancing. They loved the whole vibe. So just the personalizing it is what I'm loving now. And because before, you know what, weddings just kind of looked like
The
the
same.
same.
Hmm.
So now just having people like the different color stories, the vibrant colors, the textures, all of that, and making each element like the cocktail hour, making it so fun and interactive. I love all of that. And the personalizing, like, okay, see what I tell you? I can just go on and on, but like the attire, having the wedding party dress how they want to dress, what makes them feel good, what makes them feel beautiful and exciting or excited, like all of those things. That's what I love.
And what are some things that you're excited to see kind of fade away? I mean, you've seen, again, so many trends come and go, but is there things that you think are overdone or things that couples need to like let go of as they're planning or?
Well, okay, so it's hard to say that they should let go, but I'll say this, if it doesn't connect to them, and I'll say this too, I haven't done these in a long time. So like money dances, like bouquet,
Mm,
not bouquet tosses, it's kind of, I don't know, that's kind of like in the middle. Some people are like, I'm over it, I don't want to do it. I haven't done one in a long time.
mhm.
And garter tosses, I haven't done those in a long time. So those kind of things, if they don't connect to you, then don't do them.
So the money dances I have to just double click on because it's popular in Middle Eastern cultures, which my father's Middle Eastern, and when we would go to Lebanon, where my father's from, and we would be in we go to weddings, it's so popular where they literally have all the men come and throw money on the young couple, right? And it's
See,
like the uncles, they come and they do it, and it's meant to be a, you know, a celebration, and it's good health or good wealth, you know, and all these things for the future of the couple. But you know, here in the States, when that, you know, at my engagement party, there was like a moment where my dad was throwing the money and people were like, what's going on?
see, and that's why it's hard to say like what we should let go because I don't know. That's why I say like whatever connects to the couple because there are also folks who don't, who feel like the brunch, the farewell brunch, like they should let that go. And I'm like, well, why? Like this is another time for people to connect. So there are some people who are like, we're over that. We're, it's just not a thing anymore. But I feel whatever is connected, whatever you're connected to, because I see a lot of, like you said, I see a lot of garter tosses that are a little
Yeah. Cringy.
entertaining, very entertaining. So it depends, whatever your thing is.
I am curious when you're, just because I said cringe, and this is one of the things that sometimes makes me cringe when I'm looking at wedding videos. But like, what do you do in a situation where you're at a wedding and there's speeches and toasts and they're like going on, or it's inappropriate? Like, have you come? I'm sure you've come across it, but like have you, and how do you handle it?
I've come across it, and I will say this: it's hard, and I've never stopped because it's always the parents. And it's like you don't want to stop the parents because they're the parents.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you have to, as planners, have the conversation with your couple to say,
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, here's what we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Where, at what point do you want to like start having the MC walk over and take the mic, have something happen? And they're like, no, just let them go on. Let's just plan for it because it's their time to shine.
Mm-hmm.
But at one time at a nonprofit event that happened, and it was like, okay, what do we do? Let's invite people over somewhere else. Let's kind of, at those kind of situations, it's okay to do that, or we can figure something out. But at a wedding, I feel like as a planner, you have to have that conversation, and
Up
have the
front.
conversation as a couple, have the conversation with your parents, and say like, hey, if you talk over this amount, this is what it means.
Yep.
But also remember, it's their time to shine in front of their family members.
I think that's a really good tip. You got to like let them know up front, hey, you're going to have this amount of minutes and make sure you practice it or whatever it is because I mean, I've seen it with bridesmaid speeches where I get like so uncomfortable as they're doing it. I'm like, did they practice this? Again, no judgment, but like I feel bad for the couple who it's like it's a 10-minute speech going on and people want to dance and now it's like, a monologue.
Yeah, knock on wood. Let me knock on wood. We haven't had that experience where a member of the wedding party has done anything like that. So, because we always remind folks to have those conversations.
Okay, that's a great tip. Is there anything, Shonda, that you would like to share that we haven't covered with couples, especially like some couples who are planning for 23 and 24 weddings, things that you think that they should know?
I would definitely, the biggest thing would be about that, about your wedding budget. Just really like try to do as much research for your area as you can. If you're not hiring a full service planner, at least call someone and see if they can do like a budget review with you, help you put your budget together, because I feel like couples are so, and it's only because they're not knowing 100%. It's a sticker shock, and it's not a good one, because I honor that it takes a lot for a person to save up for a wedding. So
Mm-hmm.
have some conversation with a luxury planner, because, and I say this, or a higher end planner, I say this because they know all of the different ranges. So if you have a conversation, leave with a leave with a budget that you can realistically plan and come up with a number that's realistic, so you're not in shock and that you're not making bad decisions. So see if they have like an hourly kind of plan or something like that, not just DMing them and asking questions, but see if they have a consultation fee that they can uh, go through a full budget with you, and then you can plan from a comfortable place and not a stressed out place.
I think that's so smart. And also just respecting the vendor's time, because I think what happens is now in the world of Instagram and TikTok, everyone feels so accessible. And so the DM questions that are coming through, first of all, that's not how most planners are spending their time, or
Yes.
most vendors in the DM. So if they're not responding to you in a timely fashion, they're not trying to be rude. They're probably out producing an event or working. But also being mindful of their time. And I think that's smart, saying, hey, look, I have questions. You might be out of my range, but I'd love to, do you have a consultation fee? That's really
Yes.
a very kind of, I would say, generous way to get that valuable insight, right? Because the picking your brain thing, where a lot of, I want to pick your brain about it's not nice. It's not, and first of all, I hate the word pick your brain, because I feel
I
like
do.
it's like, I get the visual of it.
I
I really hate that.
That is funny. No, I'm just like, what do you mean? Like, my time is valuable, just like you're at work and no one, you're getting paid to be at work. You're getting paid for your knowledge. You're getting, so yes, do not pick anyone's brain.
And expect them to just give you all of their advice and their years of experience without, thinking about how you would compensate them, especially if they're not someone that you could actually hire, right? You're just literally like, um, yeah, trying to get that advice. Well,
Yes.
Shonda, I feel like I could talk to you forever, but just because you're just such a warm person and
Oh,
you're so engaging, and I would love to continue to have you give advice on Loverly, because you have so many good insights
oh yeah,
for
I would
our
love to.
couples. Yeah, so I'm gonna link here in our show notes your social media, your Instagram, and your website. That way, if someone wants to get in touch with you for one of their events, they know how to do that. And I will actually link in our show notes a couple of the articles that I mentioned, like the alternative to Father of the Bride. But we're going to need you to give us some of your tips, because I just feel like, you got the 25, is that what we said, 25 years of
Yes.
experience. And I also want to make sure that we link some of the galleries of your wedding, so people can, as they're listening to this, see all of your beautiful work.
Thank you. This has been so great. And I will definitely come back on if you'll have me. I love, like I said, I love talking. I love talking about weddings and I love educating couples and other creatives too.
Thank you so much. We'd love to have you back. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. If you've enjoyed this podcast and want more inspiration and guidance, check out our new and improved wedding planning platform at loverly.com, where we offer free wedding planning tools and advice to get you hitched without a hitch. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Loverly. Happy planning!